make it plain.
This is MIP.
That they may run and not faint. Though the fish is only for a while.
Sam Smith with the Progressive Review is sticking around with us, folks, for 53 years of news while there's still time to do something about it. We're covering this Vegas shooting, 50 plus dead, 200 injured. We're already on Facebook Live too, facebook.com/makeitplain, twitter.com/makeitplain. I'm sorry, not on Twitter, not yet. Working on that. Facebook.com/makeitplain, youtube.com/makeitplain is where we are. Now, let me say this. You want to join us on either Facebook or YouTube as well, because we may go over time during our break with these two guests. Lad Everitt also with us, One Pulse for America. And if we do, we'll continue that discussion through the break on facebook.com/makeitplain and on youtube.com/makeitplain. Sam, hold on for a moment. We're going to hear from Lad Everitt, One Pulse for America.
Sure.
Lad, God bless you. Good morning. Your initial reaction to this news in Vegas. And by the way, this is the 200, according to the gunviolencearchive.org. This is the 272nd mass shooting in America, and this is the 275th day of 2017. This is the 272nd mass shooting of 2017. Lad, good morning. Your initial reaction. Thank you, buddy, for being with us too.
Yeah, hey, Mark. Yeah, my wife got me up a short time ago and informed me about what happened. You know, like everybody else, I'm heartbroken. You know, some of my initial thoughts are, you know, I'm kind of stunned at how similar this shooting is to what happened in the Texas Tower all those years ago in the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, my initial reaction is, you know, it seems like the same exact scenario, and in, you know, 50 years, we've learned nothing. We are allowing the same exact type of incident to occur, except now with far deadlier weapons, with, you know, firearms, high capacity ammunition magazines, deadlier rounds, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So this is incredibly sad. I think it's going to shine a spotlight on where this pathetic Congress is on guns right now, which is to say that they're trying to deregulate silencers right now, and make it easy to carry a concealed weapon anywhere you want in this country with minimal screening. So I think you're going to see attention on that. I think you're going to see a great deal of attention on the fact that Nevada residents had passed a universal background check referendum in the last election cycle, and it has not been implemented by the Attorney General in that state. So I think you're going to see a great deal of attention on that as well. But for the time being, you know, my heart is with all those affected, and there's a lot of families obviously that are hurting this morning. And you know, we'll wait to see more details about the 64-year-old man and what weapons he had and how he obtained them.
Now, let me ask you this question, and then it's important in terms of how he obtained them. One listener's already called and said to me that this just can't be helped because it sounded like this was an automatic weapon. A caller said that automatic weapons are already illegal. So there's no, you know, it just, the law alone wouldn't have stopped this anyway. First of all, is that even true? Because if the assault weapons ban expired, does that still prohibit assault weapons?
Let's back up just a minute.
Okay.
Very often after mass shootings with a semi-automatic weapon, the witnesses will report that they heard quote unquote automatic gunfire. And the reason for that is because semi-automatic weapons sound like automatic weapons in practice. That's how quickly they fire. A semi-automatic rifle, I have no idea what weapon this man used, so I don't want to infer I do.
Right.
But let's assume there's a shooting with a semi-automatic AR-15. That weapon will shoot as often as you can pull the trigger, repeatedly pull the trigger, which is really, really fast. So a lot of times in these shootings, witnesses will report, I heard an automatic weapon, when in fact what they were hearing was a semi-automatic weapon designed for battlefield use. So I would say let's put the brakes on that and wait. To the assertion that there's nothing we can do, nothing could be further from the truth. That's just flat out false. There's a zillion things we could do in this country to stop guys like this from getting guns and massacring people. Reinstating the federal assault weapons ban is certainly one of those things. Passing at the federal level a universal background check bill, tougher screening for things like domestic violence, substance abuse, and domestic violence would also drastically cut down these shootings. So no, there is plenty we can do that other democracies have already done to significantly cut their own gun death and gun injury rates.
Sam Smith with us at the Progressive Review, lad, and Sam has been saying for months, if not years, that those of us who are so-called liberals or gun responsibility advocates, at the very least, should try to get the over 70% of NRA members and the majority of hunters polled, people who actually own guns and use guns, to join our movement and coalition for sensible gun laws. What's your reaction to that? Is that possible, or have we already even tried that?
Yeah, we have tried it. There have been groups, moderate gun groups over the years that have challenged the NRA. None of them have lasted. You know, I think it's very important to understand first that the NRA runs the gun industry. It is not the other way around. The NRA basically gives marching orders to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the trade group for the gun industry. So the NRA has a lot of power in terms of being able to boycott or oppose those who stand up in that space to challenge its primacy over the gun policy agenda. There are differing opinions on whether it's worthwhile to reach out to individual gun owners across the country. I am one of those who is more skeptical. My view of this is simple, and it's that you know, moderate gun owners now have had 50 years to police their own space and confront the radicals who really have been dictating gun policy for decades now. They have not done so. Why have they not done so? I'm not sure why they haven't. I have a theory. I think it's because doing so involves personal risk. All leadership involves personal risk, but it involves personal risk for them because they know they'll be confronted, challenged, and attacked. And then I think the second reason is because very loose gun laws provide them with conveniences that they enjoy. And they have not stepped up to police their own space. I mean, I can tell you, for example, you know, I have certain hobbies. If attitudes like this developed in a space that I was very active in, I would certainly get involved and say, hey, this is not how we're going to do things. Or if you think it's how we're going to have a discussion here. Gun owners haven't done that. I think they've had ample time to do it, and they haven't done it. And I think it's also important to understand right now that only 1 in 5 Americans owns a gun. We don't need them to change our gun laws. We don't need them to change our gun laws any more than a bunch of white men needed a woman to change our abortion laws. And I think people need to understand that.
Sam, what's your reaction to what Ladd just said?
Well, I think that's a, you know, it certainly is an arguable point. I think that, though, from an organizing point of view, you have to keep trying. And the thing about it is not that, it's not the numbers, but the way the media would treat the story if you had a coalition of some hunters with liberals on the gun law campaign. The media would have to see it differently, and that's all I'm saying.
But as I was saying earlier, part of the problem is the media, because gentlemen, 48 hours from now we'll be on to something else. 272 mass shootings this year, and I don't know how many of them people can actually remember. or name. See, that's the thing that's problematic. The corporate media would have to make a decision to give adequate attention to that story, Sam. And it's almost as if we're still putting our fate too much in those hands. I mean, look, if folk can come together in that kind of coalition, God bless them, beautiful, let's do it. But if not, I mean, until then, something has to be done. Folks, we got to take a break on the radio. Sirius 6 in progress, 127. Those of you listening on the radio, switch over to facebook.com/make it plain and youtube.com/make it plain to continue our discussion through the break. The gubernatorial candidate, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate from Virginia will join us at what time? 10 after? Okay, so we'll continue this conversation through the break and maybe get a couple of comments on the other side for those of you leaving us on the radio. But we're still live on facebook.com/make it plain and youtube.com/make it plain. So lad, I know we have to kind of wait and see about, you know, what type of weapon, the laws involved and what have you. But Reverend Jackson was on with me earlier. Sam and I touched on it, lad. I want to get your take on this too. This is not just legal, an issue of legality and law, but it's also cultural, isn't it? We live in a nation that glorifies guns, gun ownership, and minimizes the collateral damage of it, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, you know, we live in a society now where and you're familiar with, you're well aware of this, Mark, where there's essentially a low-grade war going on between police and civilians in this country, and both sides are now militarized. Both sides, both police and civilians, now have immediate access to semi-automatic, rifles that were designed for battlefield use. Police commonly carry AR-15s in their patrol vehicles now, and any human being who's conscious can get an AR-15, a 50-round magazine and thousands of rounds of ammunition with no screening, particularly in a state that allows private sales of weapons. So, we have to de-escalate this arms race. So often when I'm talking about these things, I think of Jeffrey Canada's book that he wrote years ago called Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun, where he was talking about growing up in the inner city as a kid, where it started with fist fights, right. then it turned to knife fights, and by the time he's a young adult, all these fist fights are turning to shootings. That's kind of where we are as a society. We have enabled people across this country over the most, menial of problems, over the most banal of problems, to gain immediate access to firearms and to resolve those conflicts in a way that is permanent and tragic, like we see with shootings like this one in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And we have to decide as a society to de-escalate, to take that back. And we've got to do it on both sides. It can't just be civilians, you disarm, or police, you disarm. It has to be both sides coming together and agreeing to do this. But it has to take the will of both sides. And, obviously we have a government right now that's totally incompetent and in bed with the NRA. And the other issue, of course, is, we have the major police union in this country, the Fraternal Order of Police, that supports regressive gun laws across the board, and is lockstep with Trump. So we've got work to do, and it's going to start with the most basic right of all, which is the franchise. We have got to start cleaning this Congress out.
That's right.
In the midterm elections, and that's got to also happen in state, level legislatures.
As I was saying, Sam, even those who are well-meaning, who would even want to join up with our coalition, still vote on issues beyond gun control. So they'll vote for that member of Congress who supports the NRA and takes money from the NRA, as long as that member of Congress is against Obamacare. So people have to make this a priority to vote against. Let me get a quick call in. Speaking of a hunter and a gun owner, Eric in Virginia. Eric says he's a hunter and a gun owner. Eric, God bless you. Good morning. Get woke. You're on with Lad Everett and Sam Smith. Go right ahead, quickly, please.
Good morning. Like I told Screener, I am a hunter. I am a gun owner. Everything. Big Second Amendment rights person. But a couple points that I don't see done by some of our politicians, including lots of the conservatives. While I got to call my fellow conservatives out, our politicians on the current conservative side, we don't push anything out as far as any gun safety measures or anything. But then on the Democratic side, what you see is you do see gun stuff that comes out doesn't do anything to hit the daily shootings and stuff like that. And when you look at the numbers, you look at the FBI statistics, that's where a lot of the shootings are. So we need to be hitting both sides of this, and not gun control, because I hate that term. It sounds, especially as an owner, as a gun person, you start saying gun control. We want gun control. That's where people come out saying you're coming at guns and stuff like that. So simply changing the terminology, gun safety measures, gun safety laws, stuff like that, starts to get the conversation changed a little bit. So then you start bringing in those gun owners, those hunters, stuff like that. I'm part of multiple hunting groups, multiple hunting forums and stuff here in Virginia, and there's nothing approached us. We're never approached about any of this stuff.
Let me get a reaction. Lad, what's your reaction? What Eric is saying?
Well, a few things. I disagree with him about the steps Democrats have taken at the federal level to address the problem. I mean, the fact is that these mass shootings are not the common everyday shootings. Now, Mark, you pointed out that we have almost a mass shooting a day in this country, but we also lose about 90 people to gun death a day. So the really common everyday shootings are the suicides, the single person homicides that result from domestic violence, those types of things. And measures like putting a background check in place for every gun sale goes directly to those types of shootings and addressing those types of shootings. Our gun laws in this country are so regressive and so backwards and so archaic that there is no possible one omnibus bill that is going to fix all our gun laws and cut off every channel through which violent people are getting firearms. It is impossible. That's how backwards and archaic our gun laws are. We have to do it piece by piece. And with all due respect to the caller, I don't give a damn right now who's offended by the term gun control anymore. We've tried gun violence prevention. We've tried gun safety. I'm done trying to coddle people with words. There are folks dying in mass in this country. If you don't like the term gun control and that's the reason you won't stop, and act to preserve human life, I don't think me using gun safety is going to get you to do a hell of a lot more.
Mark,
well, hold on, Eric. Let me let Sam respond. So, Sam, go right ahead and please.
Well, my reaction is a little different. I mean, if I was living in Virginia, I'd want to get in touch with this guy and see what we could come up with.
Thank you. And that's part of my point. Is we're not approached as the gun owners. We're not approached to see, because most gun owners, if you actually talk to them, are very big into gun protection and gun laws, because of the fact that keeps us our rights, but also keeps our family and our people safe, which is one reason why we want guns, because of the fact we want to keep our family safe.
We won't get into that.
If you care about gun laws, what are you waiting for? How many people do you need to see bleeding until you do something? Why do we have to approach you? This is your community that has written gun policy. This is your community. Why are you not policing it?
But let's do this though. Let's put this to the test. Lad, why don't you ask Eric? We want to let everyone know when we are coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back live on Sirius X in progress, by the way, continuing our discussion with Lad Everett and Sam Smith. If you missed it, it's on. We're still live on Facebook.com/MakeItPlain and YouTube.com/MakeItPlain. Eric's on the line. He's a gun owner. Sam has put the challenge before people like me and Lad Everett of One Pulse for America. to try to bring people like Eric into the fold. Well, let's put that to the test. We don't know all the details about today, but and what happened in Vegas. We'll get more of those details. But Lad, recite, if you would, share 2 or 3 points from our wish list of gun legislation, gun control, what have you, and just ask Eric if he would support those things that One Pulse for America supports.
Well, look, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, the most basic steps would be a federal universal background check bill. So we enter a point in 2017 where we're at least doing some level of screening on every gun sale. Now, if there's going to be a firearm transfer between a dad and a son, that's fine. We don't need a background check on that. But anything beyond immediate family, we should have some level of screening on. Then beyond that, it comes to updating and toughening some of this screening. Most of the screening was designed in 1968 through the Gun Control Act. A lot of the mental health screening is very outdated and arbitrary. We need to update, who we are looking at in terms of history of violence, and toughen that screening a little bit to be in concert, essentially, with 50 years of more up-to-date research that informs us on who is likely, or more likely, let's say, to commit a violent crime. So that's the starting point.
Do you support those measures, Eric, in Virginia?
I've actually talked to lots of friends about similar pieces like that. Where some of the problems come into that, though, is the term universal background check. People need to describe that more. What's some things you propose with that? And that's where the conversations aren't happening. Because one I have proposed to, I've sent a letter or two to a couple local representatives, also in conversations with other gun owners, is maybe working with the group, not necessarily the NRA, because I'm mixed on the NRA personally, but work with groups and create, for example, a driver's license, okay? Or something similar to a driver's license. You go through a background check. At that point, almost like I have a security clearance, okay? I go through a screening every so many years for an updated security clearance, okay? Similar screening to that. So after, say, I pass this background check here, I get a now gun license. I can then have my same rights that I have now before that. I've been screened big time. And one other benefit of that is you now allow it to go to the personal gun sales. So you're not taking away my right to go sell my gun that I have now to somebody else. But when I go to sell that gun, I can then check their license and verify, okay, have you been to firearm safety courses? Have you been to training courses on how to handle firearms? Have you been screened for a background and check for that? But the problem is the politicians, and that's where I was kind of going earlier, lots of the laws and bills that have been proposed, they don't actually give details to fight the stuff like this, but also work with the Second Amendment supporters to keep all rights at the same time. And that's where I think we need to take the conversation is let's do this on both sides, protect us so that we protect our families, but also get like the wackos that who do have mental cases, keep guns out of their hands. I agree with the domestic violence piece. If you've been convicted of domestic violence, you should never own a firearm, in my opinion.
So, Lad, is his response workable?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's confusing to some degree background checks on gun sales with licensing and registration processes that some states have for handgun owners and others. But Mark, I mean, I know you're trying to do the right thing this morning and bring people together, but I think this is the wrong conversation. We need to stop. I'm done talking about gun rights and what the NRA tells us that the Constitution said. Don't we know that the NRA hates the Constitution at this point, now that they're supporting the most fascist U.S. government in history by a long shot? Yeah. I mean, this is a waste of time to me. Second, guns don't protect you. Put a gun in your home dramatically increases the risk of homicide and suicide for everyone in that home. So I'm done with this kind of pretend play, let's make this safe for gun owners type conversations. They are a waste of time. They are one of the primary reasons that we keep having these discussions after horrific tragedies. You know, if you want to keep a gun in your home and increase the risk to yourself and others because you're scared and you can't overcome your fear and come to a better solution, fine, go for it. But I am tired and done waiting for change because people need to get comfortable with words or are confused about laws or actually have bought into this lie that a gun makes safer. We have to get beyond this. We do not need gun owners to change these laws. We've waited for them for 50 years. They have done nothing to police their own.
All right. Gentlemen, we've got to go. Eric, thank you for your call. We'll continue dialogue.
Thank you, guys.
Sam Smith of the Progressive Review. Be sure to check him out, prorev.com. Sam, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Lad, we will stay in close touch if we can throughout the day. I'm sure we'll have you back tomorrow on some of this as well, okay?
Thanks, sir. Good
Thank
talking
you.
to
Appreciate it. Lad Everitt of One Pulse for America, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to shift gears now, if we can. We are going to be joined now by a very special guest. Right now, the latest information is that 50 people have lost their lives. The tragedy is that 200 have also been injured. Those that number, as a matter of fact, seems to continue to climb.